In the heart of the Rocky Mountains, where every day is a fight for survival, a young bobcat made a choice that no one could have predicted. When it heard the desperate cry of a baby deer, instinct should have told it to hunt. But what this bobcat did instead shocked even the most seasoned wildlife experts. It was early spring, and the forest was slowly waking up from a long, frozen winter. Snow still clung to the shaded northern slopes, but fresh grass was starting to sprout in the clearings, drawing out herds of deer and elk. Birds chirped above, and creeks gushed with snowmelt, cutting through the silence with the roar of new life. Deep inside this wild place, a bobcat named Ash prowled alone. He was just over 2 years old, lean but strong, and his short tail flicked sharply behind him with every step. His coat, golden brown with black spots, blended almost perfectly with the forest shadows. He moved like smoke, quiet and alert, his amber eyes always scanning. Ash had learned to survive the hard way. He lost his mother to a trapper before he was a year old. Since then, he had kept away from both humans and other predators. He wasn't the biggest in the forest, nor the fastest, but what he lacked in size, he made up for in cunning. On this particular morning, Ash was moving along a ridge above a grassy clearing. He hadn't eaten since the day before yesterday and was beginning to feel the hunger claw at his belly. He paused, ears twitching. Something was moving below him, something small. He crouched low and crept to the edge of the ridge. There, below, in the tall grass, was a fawn. A baby deer, barely a few weeks old, its long legs wobbly as it tried to stand. It was alone, no sign of the mother. Ash's instincts surged. A baby deer, especially one separated from its mother, would be an easy meal. But then something strange happened. As Ash watched, a shadow moved across the clearing from the opposite side. Silent but powerful. A coyote. The coyote's coat was mottled gray and brown, its eyes sharp with hunger. It, too, had spotted the fawn. Ash froze. He had seen coyotes take down young deer before. It would be quick, brutal but fast. The fawn's ears perked up. It sensed something. It turned in the direction of the coyote, legs trembling. Then the coyote bolted. Ash didn't know what came over him. Maybe it was the loneliness of being alone so long. Maybe it was the memory of watching his own sibling taken by a hawk while their mother had been out hunting. Or maybe, just maybe, it was something deeper, something like instinct, but more than that. Before he knew it, Ash launched himself from the ridge. He hit the ground fast and hard, right between the fawn and the coyote. The coyote skidded to a stop, snarling. Ash growled back, every hair on his body standing up. He knew the coyote was bigger, and probably stronger. But Ash had the high ground in spirit. The standoff didn't last long. The coyote, surprised and outnumbered, backed off. It snarled once more before slipping back into the woods. Ash turned to the fawn. It hadn't run. It just stared at him with wide, dark eyes, shaking, confused, but unharmed. Ash slowly backed away, expecting the fawn to run. But it didn't. It limped forward a step, its front leg bent awkwardly. Ash noticed the wound now, probably from a fall or scrape. Something inside him changed in that moment. He didn't run. He didn't attack. He didn't leave. Instead, he circled once, lowered his body to the grass, and waited. The fawn tried to walk again, but collapsed. It let out a soft, pitiful cry, half fear, half pain. Ash got up, moved closer, then paused. He didn't know what to do. He had never been close to another animal like this, not since his mother. Yet, something told him to stay. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Ash lay next to the fawn, keeping watch. Birds returned to their nests, and the light dimmed to amber and gold. The fawn dozed off, too tired to run or even move. Ash stayed alert. That night, he didn't hunt. He didn't eat. He didn't sleep much either. But nothing came for the fawn. Not while Ash was there. By morning, the fawn stirred. Ash stood and stretched, but didn't leave. The fawn tried to rise again and made it to its feet this time, still limping, but better. Ash watched silently. And when the fawn began to walk toward the tree lean, slow and uncertain, Ash followed. They were an odd pair, predator and prey. But something had happened in the clearing that day. A bond had formed, not through instinct or need, but through a choice, one that neither of them understood. Days passed, and the forest whispered their tale through the trees. Some animals ran at the sight of them, confused and startled. Birds took flight when Ash appeared alongside the little fawn, who had begun to regain strength. Ash hunted only small prey, rabbits, mice, birds, but never deer. Not anymore. At night, they slept near each other under thick branches, sheltered from wind and rain. And during the day, Ash stayed close, guarding the fawn while it grazed. He didn't know why he stayed. But he did. One evening, 3 days after their first meeting, Ash heard movement in the underbrush. It was fast, heavy. More than one animal. Ash stiffened, ears high. Then, from between the trees, a doe appeared. The mother. She rushed to the fawn, sniffing and nuzzling, checking every inch of her baby. The fawn cried out with joy and leaned into its mother. Ash stood still, unsure of what to do. The doe lifted her head. She looked at him. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, surprisingly, she didn't bolt. Maybe she could smell that her baby had not been harmed. Maybe something deeper told her the bobcat was no threat. She gave a soft snort and turned. The fawn looked at Ash one last time. It walked after its mother, but stopped halfway. It turned back. Ash didn't move. Then the fawn walked back to him, pressing its head gently against his front leg before trotting back to the doe. Ash watched them disappear into the trees, swallowed by the green silence of the forest. He stayed there for a while, staring at the place where they had vanished. And then, alone once again, he turned and walked back into the woods. But something in him was different now. Something had changed. And that was only the beginning. The forest remembered. Long after the fawn and its mother vanished into the trees, their scent lingered, and so did the memory of what had happened. Creatures of the forest may not speak as humans do, but they sense. They remember kindness. They remember danger. And now, they remembered the bobcat who had chosen compassion over instinct. Ash, the young bobcat, returned to his routine, but the days that followed didn't feel the same. He still hunted, still moved like a ghost through the underbrush, but something in him had changed. He had spent days with the fawn, watched over it, protected it. That experience had opened a part of him he never knew existed, a part that didn't just survive, but cared. About a week later, a storm rolled in over the mountains. The sky turned dark and angry, and cold rain slashed through the treetops. Wind howled between the rocks, snapping thin branches like dry bones. Ash took shelter in a cave he knew well, one tucked behind a curtain of ivy and moss. It wasn't much, but it was dry. As the storm roared outside, Ash curled up, his fur soaked and heavy. He thought of the fawn. Was it safe? Had it found shelter? Was it now back with its herd, running through the forest like it should? He closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come easily. The next day, the world was silent and wet. Streams overflowed, and fallen trees blocked old trails. Ash ventured out carefully, sniffing the air. That's when he smelled something familiar. It was faint, but it pulled him forward. Through mud and mist, he followed the scent, not of deer, but of something else. Blood. He moved cautiously, each step deliberate. Eventually, he reached a small clearing that looked as though it had seen violence. There were tufts of fur, deep claw marks in the earth, and splashes of blood on the ferns. And lying in the middle, barely moving, was the doe, the mother of the fawn he had once protected. Ash's breath caught. She was injured. A deep gash ran along her hind leg, and her breathing was ragged. She must have fought off something. Wolves, maybe. Or another predator. Ash approached slowly, staying low to the ground. The doe raised her head, eyes wide with fear and pain, but she didn't run. Maybe she remembered him. Ash didn't know how to help, but he knew she couldn't be left like this. He circled once, then disappeared into the woods. For the next 2 days, Ash did something no wild cat was ever expected to do. He stayed nearby, not too close to cause stress, but close enough to watch. He kept other scavengers away. Coyotes sniffed around once, but a sharp snarl from Ash sent them packing. Buzzards circled above but never landed. He even dragged some leaves and dry grass closer to her to help her stay warm. On the 3rd morning, Ash saw movement beyond the trees. 2 fawns, one of them, he recognized immediately. It was the same young deer he had saved. The fawn hesitated when it saw Ash, but then ran past him toward its mother, nuzzling her. The other fawn followed. Ash took a step back. Then, from the shadows, came more deer, an entire herd. The buck leading them stopped short when he saw Ash and let out a warning snort. The rest of the herd froze. Ash didn't move. He simply stared, ears alert but body relaxed. The injured doe, barely able to stand, looked toward the herd and gave a soft call. The buck's ears flicked, and slowly, he stepped forward. The herd surrounded her, nudging, inspecting, comforting. Ash stood there, hidden between 2 birch trees, watching quietly. His job was done. He turned to leave, but paused when he heard something. A soft sound, almost like a whisper. He looked back. The little fawn, the one he had protected, was standing a few paces behind him. No fear. Just watching him. And then it did something strange. It took 1 step closer and bowed its head, the way deer sometimes greet one another. Ash didn't know what to make of it. But for the first time in his life, he didn't feel like an outsider in his own forest. That night, the stars returned. Clear and bright, spread across the sky like stories waiting to be written. Ash curled up beneath an old oak tree near the stream. He was tired, but content. Something was changing in the forest. He could feel it. And he wasn't the only one. The next few days were quiet. Ash returned to hunting, following familiar trails and listening to the wind for signs of life. But wherever he went, it seemed the animals watched him differently now. Squirrels didn't chatter as loudly in alarm. Birds didn't always fly away at the first sight of his shadow. Even the fox he used to fight over territory with gave him a wide, respectful berth. Word had spread, without words. The bobcat who saved the fawn. One afternoon, as Ash hunted near the river bend, he heard crashing in the underbrush. He turned sharply, muscles tensing. A dog. No, 2 dogs. Large, muscled, collared. Hunting dogs. Humans. Ash bolted, weaving through trees, low to the ground. He had seen what these dogs could do, seen them chase foxes to exhaustion, tear into raccoons like toys. And now they were on his trail. He sprinted, lungs burning, heart pounding. The dogs were fast, crashing through ferns and barking wildly. Ash leapt over rocks, dodged fallen branches, but he could hear them getting closer. Then, he made a mistake. A leap too short. His paw slipped. He tumbled down a muddy slope, hitting the bottom hard. He struggled to stand. His leg twisted sharply beneath him. Pain shot up through his body. The barking was louder now. Closer. He dragged himself toward a hollow log, crawled inside, and held his breath. The dogs arrived seconds later, sniffing, growling, circling the log. One of them pawed at it, trying to squeeze its head inside. Ash closed his eyes. Was this it? Then something happened. A sound, familiar. Sharp hoofbeats. And a cry, a high-pitched snort. Ash looked through the narrow opening of the log. A deer. No, a fawn. The same fawn. It stood on the hill above the slope, stomping its small hooves on the ground. Loud. Frantic. Calling out. The dogs turned instantly, ears up. They saw the fawn and bolted after it. Ash tried to move, tried to call out, but couldn't. The fawn ran just fast enough to stay ahead of the dogs, leading them deeper into the woods, away from the log, away from Ash. Risking everything. It was almost an hour before Ash dared to crawl out. He was injured but alive. And once again, because of the fawn. He limped slowly through the trees, resting often, until he reached a familiar grove. A place full of soft moss and gentle wind. There, waiting, was the fawn. Alone again. No dogs in sight. It had returned. It had come back. Ash lowered his head in thanks. He didn't understand it, but the fawn did. A bond had been formed, and it was now stronger than ever. And just like that, the wild had changed again. Predator and prey. Hunter and hunted. But not this time. Not anymore. Because now, they were something else entirely. What began as a wild predator saving a helpless fawn had turned into a remarkable bond that even nature couldn't explain. But the final test of their connection was still to come, and this time, the entire forest would bear witness. Spring had given way to summer, and the forest had never been more alive. Thick ferns curled toward the sun, streams shimmered with light, and birds danced between the trees in bursts of color. But even in this season of peace, danger still lingered beneath the beauty. Ash's leg was healing, but not fully. The injury from the hunting dogs had left a limp in his stride, forcing him to hunt slower, move carefully, and stay closer to familiar paths. Yet he wasn't alone. The fawn, now growing stronger and faster, had stayed close by. It would graze in the clearings nearby, then wander over to check on Ash, nudging him softly with its nose or resting beside him when the days grew hot. It was as if they had become family in a place where families usually looked nothing alike. Ash, once solitary and distrusting, had begun to let his guard down, not just with the fawn, but with the forest. It no longer felt like a battleground. It felt like a home. One golden afternoon, as Ash was resting in the shade, he heard an unusual sound. It wasn't the soft rustle of deer or the chirp of birds. It was heavy. Repetitive. Metal. Clink. Crunch. Clink. Ash stood up slowly and peered through the tall grass. Humans. 2 of them. Men in heavy boots and vests, carrying rifles, walking slowly along the edge of the forest. One of them had binoculars. The other had a trap slung over his shoulder. Hunters. Not hikers. Not campers. Ash backed away slowly. He knew what they were. But then he froze. Just up ahead, in the open, was the fawn. It was grazing calmly, unaware. Too far for Ash to reach in time. Too close to the humans. Ash's heart thumped hard against his ribs. He knew he couldn't attack the humans, couldn't outrun their weapons. But he had to do something. Without thinking, Ash sprinted forward, not toward the fawn, but across the hunter's path. He darted into view, then bolted sideways, yowling loudly and kicking up leaves and dirt. The sudden noise startled the fawn, who looked up and saw the danger. In a flash, it turned and ran the other way, disappearing into thick underbrush. The hunters shouted and raised their rifles, aiming for the flash of motion, but Ash had already vanished into the trees. He ran fast, weaving between trunks and crashing through dry leaves until he reached a dense thicket, then dropped to the ground, panting. His leg throbbed with pain. He had drawn them off. But not far enough. He could hear them now, closer. Tracking him. Ash tried to stand, but stumbled. Then came a snap. A metal trap. He had seen them before. His mother had died in one. Now it was in front of him, already set, hidden under brush. Waiting. He backed away, but his injured leg caught on a root. He fell. And the hunters closed in. Just as one of them raised his rifle, a loud crashing sound came from the right. A blur of brown. The fawn. It sprinted into the open, eyes wild, hooves pounding. The hunters turned instinctively, distracted. And that's when it happened. A great roar split the air. From the far side of the clearing, a full-grown buck, the fawn's father, charged out of the forest, antlers low, fury in his eyes. The men barely had time to react. The buck struck the first one with such force that the rifle flew from his hands. The second man stumbled backward, slipping in the leaves. Chaos exploded. The fawn zigzagged across the clearing, drawing their attention away as more deer suddenly emerged from the brush, 3, then 4, then the entire herd. They had come for one of their own. Ash, stunned, watched from the ground as the humans fled, chased off by the overwhelming movement and noise of 30 animals thundering through the trees. Within seconds, the forest fell silent again. The deer were gone. So were the hunters. And Ash, still alive. Later that evening, the fawn returned to him. This time, Ash didn't just rest beside it. He leaned into the fawn, gently brushing his head against its side, the way a sibling would. And the fawn curled up beside him, keeping watch as Ash slept. As the weeks passed, their legend grew. Forest creatures began to change their behavior around them. The fox that once battled Ash for territory now kept a respectful distance. A raccoon even shared a stream with the bobcat, something unheard of. Owls perched above them at night, not as predators, but as silent guardians. And the bond between Ash and the fawn deepened. When one moved, the other followed. When one rested, the other stood guard. Seasons changed. Leaves turned gold, then red, then fell. The forest prepared for winter again. One snowy morning, hikers spotted something unusual from a ridge above the valley. A bobcat and a young deer, walking side by side through the falling snow. Not chasing. Not hiding. Just moving together. A local wildlife photographer captured the moment in a grainy but powerful image. That photo went viral. Wildlife biologists, animal behaviorists, and media outlets all tried to explain what they saw. Survival adaptation, some said. Unlikely companionship, said others. But one elder from a nearby tribal village said it best. He looked at the photo and nodded slowly. That, he said, is the forest remembering love. Years passed. Ash grew older, his coat grayer. The fawn became a full-grown deer, strong and swift. Though they spent more time apart, they always returned to the same places. The same stream. The same grove. The same mossy rock under the wide oak where it had all begun. And every now and then, forest visitors still spoke of them. The bobcat and the deer. The guardians of the wild. Proof that even in a world ruled by instinct, violence, and survival, compassion can still rise above it all, and that true connection needs no words. In the wild, we often expect life to follow a strict, savage code, hunter and prey, strong versus weak. But sometimes, just sometimes, a story unfolds that rewrites the rules. One choice. One moment of mercy. And an entire world can change. This is not just a tale about a bobcat and a deer. It's a story about the power of kindness in the most unexpected places. And how the smallest act of courage can echo forever through the trees.